Is Australia exporting weapons to Israel? That's what the Greens defence spokesperson was alleging in the Senate in late March.
This government is content for ongoing two-way trade, military trade, with the State of Israel. Content to send weapons and weapons parts to Israel to literally fuel the genocide, and then, perhaps as offensively, also welcomes signing new contracts with major Israeli arms manufacturers for equipment that is literally being tested on the Palestinian people as we speak.
Now, Shoebridge's heated accusations were met with an even more heated defence from the Labor government's Assistant Minister for Trade.
The proposition that has been advanced this morning by Senator Shoebridge so lacks honesty, so lacks seriousness. If you're going to have honesty, you know what you have to do. You know what you have to do. You have to tell the truth. You have to tell the truth. You have to have some regard to the facts.
So the Greens are accusing the government of exporting weapons to Israel, while the government insists Australia hasn't supplied a single weapon to Israel for at least the past 5 years. Who's correct here? Well, like many political debates, this is one clouded by technicalities. Australia may not have technically exported weapons to Israel, but it appears to have signed off on a whole lot of defence-related exports. So what does defence-related exports mean? Defence has repeatedly said these can include dual-use items, not just military use. So things like software, radios or chemicals that can have legitimate civilian and commercial uses. The Department of Defence has issued more than 320 of these permits for Israel-bound exports since the 1st of January 2017, and 2 more have been issued since the 7th of October. A major issue is that Defence has refused to be more specific about exactly what it has approved.
Well, Senator, you won't be surprised. I won't go into the content of individual permit decisions.
But we do know Israel is one of the countries that uses F-35 fighter jets, and we also know Australian companies contribute to the global F-35 supply chain, producing parts for the major US defence contractor Lockheed Martin, prompting a somewhat circular exchange with defence officials at a recent Senate committee hearing.
Do you consider parts of an F-35 fighter jet, such as the parts manufactured in Australia and used on Israeli Defence Force fighter jets to open the bomb bay doors, do you consider those weapons?
Senator, a pencil is used for writing. It's not designed in and of itself to be a weapon, but it can be.
Bomb bay doors are generally used to release bombs.
Under the UN definition, weapons are defined as whole systems, like armoured vehicles, like tanks, like combat helicopters, paint.
So the
other items are not considered weapons
the
in and of
50
themselves.
odd.
So the Defence Department's saying that under the UN definition, categorically no weapons were sent to Israel for at least the past 5 years. But muddying the waters is official data from another government department, this time the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. According to DFAT's official export figures, some Australian exporters have supplied goods to Israel within the past 5 years, which they've marked as arms and ammunition. And technically that category can include firearms, bombs, missiles, and parts and accessories of those weapons.
And then perhaps an old part of the definition, swords, cutlasses, bayonets, lances and similar arms. Yeah.
That's DFAT's chief economist, who was also asked how reliable those official export figures were. Woods explained that exporters self-declare to the Australian Border Force, which then reports that data to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which sends it on to DFAT, which publishes it.
DFAT has no quality control over the data, neither does ABS or the ABF.
Well, I'm assuming...
Except to the extent that we have the exporters putting the data in.
When we pushed DFAT on this, they told us the government agencies had gone back and checked that all of the goods referred to were exported with the relevant permits, and that's how they can be sure Australia hasn't sent any weapons to Israel. Seeing as the government has repeatedly complained about what it labels as misinformation on social media about Australia supplying weapons to Israel, we asked the Department of Defence, why not put the matter beyond doubt and be transparent about exactly which items have been exported. A defence spokesperson said they can't reveal specific details of permits due to legal, commercial and privacy obligations. But they said whenever they assess export permit applications, they have to look at a range of criteria, including that there's no overriding risk to Australia's national interests or its international obligations. They also said export permits are sometimes needed for equipment to be sent overseas for repairs, but it then comes back to Australia. Speaking of equipment coming into Australia, there's more to this puzzle. We learned in February this year, 4 months after the current conflict began, that the Israeli company Elbit Systems had been awarded a major contract worth more than 900 million Australian dollars to supply sensors and other systems for the Australian Army's new infantry fighting vehicles. Now, South Korea's Hanwha is the main contractor, but Elbit is now doing major work on the same project. We also know Australia and Israel signed a Memorandum of Understanding on Defence Industry Cooperation in 2017. What's in that agreement? The government won't say. A Freedom of Information application was recently blocked. As much as ministers might complain about misinformation, unless and until we get more transparency from the government, it's easy to see why speculation will swirl, and it'll be hard to have a factually informed debate.